kind of misclarified or misstated what I said there. It's a 21% increase over the proposed budget increase. The budget itself is over $5 million, so it's more like 2% of the overall budget for the high school. I apologize for any misunderstanding.
Mary Farwell, 21 Grand Drive. I'd just like a clarification on something I heard that I think was new information for me. On the capital costs that we have to Manchester as a result of, what, the 20-year program that we started back in 2003. So if we have a lesser amount of students, regardless of why, apparently we pay a lesser amount of the capital costs. Is that, did I hear that right?
The capital cost is based on the enrollments for the 3 sending districts. So we get a bill, it's a total bill, $1,800,000. I total up how many high school students are attending from Auburn, Candy, and Hooksett. Hooksett pays the percent of their students to the total percent. And then you apply that percent to the $1.8 million capital cost bill.
Okay. All right. So at some point, Auburn's going to go away. Does that mean you're going to have to add more into our budget because of that?
Your clarification?
The tuition agreement calls for, when there is a withdrawal, that the capital cost assessed to that district is frozen at the amount that was paid the year before the withdrawal. So Auburn's withdrawal is September 1st, 2013. Auburn's capital cost will be frozen at the 2012 level, and as long as there are any Auburn students in Manchester, and there are youngsters, upperclassmen that will go through the system and graduate, Auburn will continue to pay that capital cost even though its freshmen are going to Pinkerton. And then essentially, Manchester eats that.
Okay, so we don't get
for the now the amount that we pay. I think an easier way to look at it is what percentage of, for right now, what percentage of all SAU 15 students are attributable to Hooksett? And that's the percentage of the total that Hooksett would pay in that given year.
Okay, so if we had 50% of the kids, we would pay 50% of the 1.8.
So our numbers might go down, but if the numbers in Auburn and Candy go down as well, our percentage of the total population may remain the same.
Okay.
And vice versa. Any combination could occur.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else wish to? Trustee Madison.
Jimmy Shaw, Mall Road. Trying to understand the additional request of $100,000. I think I heard that over the course of the last 3 years, there's been substantial monies not spent at the end of the fiscal year. And then those monies go to, and that's the part I missed, I don't know, where do those funds go? Do they go to the town side, or the town, they go to?
Clarification on that?
Any money?
For the school district, any money that is left over as fund balance goes to the general fund. So it would, yes, all money that is not spent under the school district is returned. So that number that you're referring to is sent back to the town.
Clarification, Dr. Bill?
Jim, I guess another way of looking at it, Jim's correct, but another way of looking at it is any money that's not spent, that undesignated fund balance, is revenue in the next year that offsets the tax rate. So if we have $1 million left over at the end of last year, that $1 million was used to offset the amount of money that had to be raised by taxation this year.
On the town side?
No, school district side.
All right.
School district side. I know it gets confusing because I think your point of confusion, Jim, may be, and other people may be confused by it as well. Municipalities in New Hampshire are able to retain their fund balance. They put it in the bank and it's savings. So if you have a bad year, if you have unanticipated expenses that come up during a year, municipalities in New Hampshire can tap into that savings. School districts are not allowed to retain that savings, that $1 million, $800,000 a number of different numbers thrown around, goes back into the revenue stream to offset tax rate. School tax rate, not municipal tax rate.
Okay. With that much revenue being left at the end of the year, I would agree with the chair of the budget committee. Pass.
Other comments?
Not for me, but for David Pearl, 79 Main Street. I would certainly agree with what Dr. Littlefield said, but we have to understand that the money that's given back in the undesignated fund balance is after any year-end spending. And last year, there was quite a bit of that. It did result in $1 million coming back, but there was 1.25 to start with. And some of that money did go to unforeseen costs, but a lot of the money went to technology, infrastructure, and things that were not appropriated in the budget. And that's what I have my concern with, is that those things that those should be put into next year's budget if they're needs for the district, and they should be voted on by the body and appropriated if the body approves, not to be reappropriated by the school board after the fact. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to? Yes.
And yeah, the only reason I thought offering a $100,000 increase because the school board heeded the advice of the budget committee to say there are savings as a result of resulting in the general fund balance. And they pointed out to us a good portion of that comes from the tuition, that we need to make sure we have funds available for that because it's non-discretionary. So we heeded that. So I thought appropriate to meet that 92%, which has been the average, which we reduce that, we would be reducing, we have a savings of 472, 569, which would be a result of using that 92% of students who attended. So that's the only reason why I propose that, because yes, it is a bottom line budget, but there are discretionary and non-discretionary. So even if we don't use the 92% and we happen to have a year where we have 100% plus one attending, then those monies need to come from somewhere. And if it comes from discretionary funds, that leaves us, we have 903,893, and that same page again, what is considered discretionary funds. So without that savings, then that discretionary fund is limited. And just one more point, the practice of the school board for the last 12 years, if not before that, at the end of the year, we've made prudent decisions on issues, mostly issues regarding safety. So one issue that we voted on is money from last year's budget to fix a fence at Underhill School, which is 3 feet high. And if you fall over that 3-foot high fence, you go down the gully. Main primary concern regarding fund spending balances is some safety issues, mostly safety issues. Of course, there are some times prudently we decide to make decisions, and we made decisions to expend technology.
I'm going to make sure that that the discussion is around the amendment.
Okay.
I understand that there are some issues here around the fund balance, but those are primarily questions on the entire budget. So I really want to focus questions and comments on the proposed amendment, please.
All right, so the 92% is why I asked for the increase to 100,000 on that tuition line.
Thank you.
I will try to keep to the amendment, and just wanted to comment on Mr. Sullivan's statement that the school board heeded the advice of the budget committee. In fact, before the 572 was cut, the Budget Committee voted to send that number to the school board without cutting it and ask them for cuts to total 572. Instead of us cutting it, we asked them. They took that up in a meeting. They came back with 0. So that was our advice.
Is this relevant to the amendment?
Thank you.
Yes, any other comments or questions on the amendment?
Ginger Kozlowski, 22 Julia Drive. You sort of answered that the money would come from the discretionary fund if all of a sudden you had to use 100%, or, you know, if 100% of the high school students showed up. What exactly would we be facing a loss of? What would you cut? You know, it's very nebulous to me what it is you're saying would have to be cut if all those students showed up.
So is your question?
The question's about the 100,000
Right.
because I want to know, are we better off playing it safe, which is what I'm hearing on this end, and adding that 100,000 in, or are we really taking a risky step by not adding that 100,000 in and facing the possibility that all the kids that you expect to show up to the high school show up and you have to pay for them, and now you've got to take it out of this discretionary funding, and I don't know what gets hurt by that going towards the high school tuition.
Yes.
Actually, Ginger, you should sit here because that's the best explanation that I've heard tonight.
Thank you.
I need to recap it a little bit because to tell you the truth, I've gotten lost because I'm not sure what fund balance has to do with any of this with the amendment. I'm not sure what $500,000 in excess tuition that the board is asked to cut has got to do with cutting the budget by $800,000. So I'm confused. And quite frankly, I'm more concerned that the voters understand and tell us what to do than that we don't tell them what to do. Traditionally, here's the rub. Traditionally, we are doing a budget 18 months before that budget is administered. So we're debating a budget now that will go through June 30th of 2013. I'm good at it. Your tax rate, your school tax rate shows that I'm good at it. It's less today than it was 6 years ago when I came here. The issue that we have is when we look into that crystal ball, all as I know is I have X number of 8th graders and Y number of seniors. So the seniors go, the 8th graders come in. My budget has always accounted for every one of those youngsters. And admittedly, in some years, the percentage of our 8th graders that decide to go on to public high school is not 100%. And in other years, it's 101%. So the safe thing to do is to budget for every youngster. With the draconian cut made here, and part of it's punishment. For the draconian cut made here, if 100% of our youngsters attend public high school next year, we have a several $100,000 problem.